Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Coulter, and this is Meant to Pause. We're coming to you from the beautiful House of Owl in Victoria, British Columbia. And today my guest is Louise Carr. Hi, Louise.
Hi, Kelly. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so great that you're here. I've had you attend one of our menopause gatherings here in Victoria.
Very fun.
It was super fun, and you were super fun. So I'm really happy that you're here again with me for the podcast. I guess I kind of want to introduce you as how I know you as a nutritionist and someone who loves food and loves good books, because we belong to the same book club, but also someone who has a great amount of knowledge and has a way of delivering this knowledge in such I love your way. How's that? So thank you so much. But I want you to maybe let the audience know a little bit more about what you do as a nutritionist and more about who you are. How's that?
Okay. I am a certified holistic nutrition consultant, and I graduated from the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition.
Awesome.
And I work with women in perimenopause and menopause, whether they take HRT or not, and I help them to nourish and support their bodies through the process of perimenopause into full menopause, because there is so much that we can do for ourselves using food and nutrition. There are so many symptoms that we can alleviate with food and nutrition, and we need to be mindful of the fact that 90% of us, 90% when we arrive at perimenopause, will already be experiencing some nutritional deficiencies.
Wow.
And so the more we can do to shore up those nutritional deficiencies, and the big one is fiber, the better, the easier, the fewer symptoms, the less aggressive our symptoms will be for us. So there is a tremendous amount that we can do for ourselves if we have the information in our own kitchens.
That's what it's all about.
That's right. So if we're empowered with the information that we need, we can then start taking action to support ourselves through this natural process.
You know, I am a big believer in the power of food. That's why food is such an important part of even our podcast. It's nourishment to me. And it's also ceremony. It's creating community. It's really a centerpiece to my ethos of Meant to Pause and our menopause gatherings. As you know, we do a bit of a potluck, right?
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
And we have to remember that for many of us, for all of our lives, we've been living within diet culture.
Yes.
And so we've had this whole message projected onto us of restriction, denial, be as small as you can. And we hear it often from the diet industry and again, through the medical providers, eat less and exercise more. And that's the worst advice you can give to a woman who is in hormonal change.
Interesting.
So we really need to have a whole mindset shift and unpack diet industry culture thinking from our brains and unpack unhealthy habits we may have learnt within our own families as young, or just from Cosmo magazine over the years about, skip breakfast, cut back. Because
so
at this stage in life, we need to be deeply nourishing and nurturing our bodies so we can reduce and eliminate our symptoms as we pass through, so that we can protect our bone health, our heart health, our brain health, our skin.
Yeah.
It's really important that we start to center ourselves in our lives and center our nourishment as a part of that.
I love this. I love this. And I love that you're pro food, you know?
Pro food. And there is no more intimate act in my mind than what you put inside your body 3 times a day.
Oh, I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful what you put inside your body, and that includes food. And we're doing this 3 times a day, and reclaim the right to nourish your body at this time of life. Yeah,
powerful. Thank you so much, Louise. I want to make that kind of the theme for our discussion, because as opposed to the deprivation culture,
that's right.
You know, during the journey, which is what I call it sometimes. What can we start doing in terms of nourishing ourselves? And let's start out with the peri. I mean,
okay.
Yeah. And if you want to speak to that.
So to kind of take a step back, when we're in perimenopause, we start feeling symptoms because our what I call juicy hormones are starting to reduce to a lower level. So that's progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen. The first to go is progesterone to lower. But this isn't a gentle curve that we're on down to a lower level. There are going to be spikes and crashes throughout the whole journey. And then we're in full menopause, and we are at a steady stream, a lower level of hormone in our bodies, as we were pre-puberty as young girls.
Wow.
Which is why menopause sometimes is referred to as our second spring.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what is happening is our ovaries have been delivering us our hormone in a complicated biology that we all learn in school, where it cycles every month and an egg is released and we're fertile and we have our menstrual cycle. Right. So we're shifting from that to this lower level. And in that process, the baton is passed from our ovaries to our adrenal glands to drip feed us this lower level of hormone.
Okay.
So our adrenal glands already are very busy with a job of their own throughout all of our lives, which is managing our stress. And for a lot of us, when we get to when we're in perimenopause and the baton needs to be passed to our adrenal glands, if we're undernourished, if we've eaten low fat, no fat, if we're over exercising, the adrenal gland, if we have inflammation in the body causing stress, if our blood sugar is imbalanced causing stress in our body on a daily basis, then we're going to feel our symptoms harder because the adrenals cannot pick up to start drip feeding and delivering us what we need.
So deprivation is...
Deprivation, stress on the body, as in, mental stress, the world we're living in right now, the stress on women right now, the many hats we wear in our families, at work, volunteering, we're the nurse, the taxi driver, the cleaner, the emotional support. Stress falls on women. And the research is there, especially coming out of COVID, how hard stress hits women. Then there's everything we see on the news and our socials every day. But then within our bodies, there's body stress, which would be dysregulated blood sugar. It would be inflammation in our bodies, in our joints, and particularly if we have inflammation in our digestive tract, in the gut lining.
Right.
So when estrogen has a anti-inflammatory property to it.
Yes.
So when it depletes to a lower level, that's when I meet the women that are saying, I'm just so gassy and bloated in a way I never was before.
Right.
It's perimenopause, or there's foods I can't eat anymore. I can't eat dairy anymore.
Right.
I can't touch, I used to be able to eat baguette, and now I can't eat baguette. And that is because you've lost the anti-inflammatory properties of estrogen. Oh. And so the inflammation that was underlying in your gut lining, you're really feeling that now. Same with our hips and our shoulders. If there's some inflammation, same with brain fog. If you've got underlying inflammation in the body, you're losing basically this kind of hormonal in quotes, medication that
Yes.
we've had available to us throughout our fertile years. That's why we feel so crappy right before our period, because we lose it at that point too, you know?
Oh my gosh.
That's like, oh my God, I've got cramps, I'm aching all over, I can't think straight. We've lost the anti-inflammatory property of estrogen.
I used to think I was like, I'd have one day a month where I was like cray,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on? What's
Yeah.
going on? And it was always,
Yeah.
right. Yes.
It's physical and mental. When it
Yeah.
comes, our hormones for us as women are very powerful chemical messengers, and we're influenced by them physically and mentally all of the
gosh.
time.
They kind of have ruled our worlds for decades, and then suddenly they're starting to
Yeah. Well, there's this very turbulent time that we're
Yeah.
going through with the spikes and crashes, and you can use food and nutrition to blunt those spikes and crashes as well. Eating more fiber.
Yeah.
Fiber drags excess estrogen out of the body in our daily detox or our daily poop.
Okay.
So if we can increase our fiber and water while we're in perimenopause, then we're not recirculating excess hormone in the body.
Would you say that's the number one thing, fiber and water?
I'm going to say fiber, protein, and healthy fats. So every meal should contain fiber, protein, and healthy fats.
Okay. Good to know.
Now, healthy fats are going to protect your brain and help you balance your blood sugar.
What is a healthy fat?
So I'm thinking avocados, nuts and seeds, walnuts, almonds, sardines, salmon, chia seeds, hemp seeds. Where else am I going? Coconut milk and coconut oil. Those are the healthy fats.
Nice.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have like a grocery shopping list on
Yes.
just start writing things down.
Yes.
So peri is one thing. Menopause, does your list change too much for what's going to nourish you the most?
Not when it comes to foods. I have a couple of. I'll just talk about healthy fats a bit more.
Yeah,
Kelly, if
let's do
that's
it.
okay.
Let's do it.
So while we're going through this hormonal change, we are also new and exciting research, because there's been so little research on women's health and on and we're at the bottom there
Yes.
with our menopause experience.
Yes.
You know, it's all on pregnancy and fertility.
We're going to change that, Louise.
Yeah. So there's new exciting research in women's brain health that shows that as we pass through perimenopause, like the brain fog is real. And we're going through a neural pruning similar to the one that we went through in puberty. So it's like Mother Nature's big joke is that you have your teen who's just staring at you blankly with nothing functioning in their brains. And we are going through the same process. We're doing neural pruning at the same time. So we have neural pruning as a toddler, again in puberty, and again in menopause. And eating your healthy fats will support your brain health through that process. Healthy fats and antioxidants.
Healthy fats.
Our brains are full of estrogen receptors. So as estrogen starts to deplete, your brain notices. Some of the anxiety we feel is the brain adjusting to that. But it is also going through neural pruning, and it is also growing new estrogen receptors ready for when we're at the lower level, so it can hoover it all up. So we need to be mindful that the food we eat needs to support our brain health as we're going through change.
I've conquered menopause, so I'm post-menopause. So what should I be eating now? Can I just eat everything?
Well, when we look at there's like an epidemic of chronic diseases in society. Yeah, it's a little bit of a bugbear of mine that just lately some of these chronic diseases have been tagged on to menopause as being a hormonal thing. You know, our cardiovascular health is important to pay attention to. So as we pass through hormonal change, it is a risk factor, but not a cause for some of the chronic diseases for women.
Right.
So here we are going through the world, and we have this event in our lives that provides an additional risk factor to us for cardiovascular disease and dementia and for our bone health.
Yes.
So it's important that we're aware of that. Hormonal change is not the cause of those diseases because they're blowing up in every, age group and community in society. We're now having cardiovascular disease and osteopenia in youth and young people because our food landscape is not great.
Yeah. Well,
so for us as perimenopausal women, I always talk about the soup that we live in. So we've touched on a couple of things already, like the high stress level for women in society, misogynistic, the fact that there's very little research, so we're kind of working blind through the process. But the other big one is that we're in kind of a toxic food system.
I agree. And so we're seeing these younger folks now, and you're thinking that's processed food is
processed food and lack of exercise.
Right.
Sedentary lifestyle.
So
we are the most sedentary cohort in society as older women. So if you've not moved, now's a great time to start moving. Find something that you love.
Yeah.
Just be aware that the soup we live in is not great for us as women. Food, stress.
Yep.
Be aware that if you haven't moved, now's a great time to start moving. And be aware that as you approach perimenopause, if you even just pick up a Mediterranean diet recipe book and start cooking from that, you're already doing good stuff for your body and getting more fiber and healthy fats and eat great protein.
Yeah.
So just be aware rather than being frightened by it all.
Yeah.
But in menopause, I would suggest sticking with foods that help to prevent cardiovascular disease, dementia, and diabetes. So managing blood sugar as well.
Right. I wanted to, we're going to go to our
which makes perimenopause a great learning experience for how you need to eat for the rest of your life. It's a lifestyle. It's not a diet.
Yeah.
And we've all spent so many years kind of failing on repeat and losing trust in ourselves and our bodies.
Yeah.
So perimenopause is a great opportunity to start afresh and okay, I'm going to learn how to deeply nourish my body, what minerals I need for my bone health, how to protect my brain, and prioritizing me.
Yeah.
And you're learning the skills that you need to stay healthy and extend your health span and your longevity for a really exciting next chapter.
Exactly, because I know when I turned 60, I was like, oh my God, thank God I made it,
Yeah.
And then, but after coming out of menopause, it was a totally different response. It was like, oh my God, what was that?
Yes.
Yeah. And the two kind of happened around the same time. Yeah, it's quite a change.
It is, especially when we're just blindsided, because we're feeling the symptoms all over our body.
Mm-hmm.
And also because when you're 10 and 11, someone takes you into a classroom and said, hey, this is what's going to happen to your body. And you might feel breast pain and you might feel growing pains in your legs and you might be moody, and that's okay. And then here we are in midlife trying to keep all the plates spinning, and we have no clue what's coming.
Louise, that's why we're doing these gatherings.
Exactly.
That's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I'm super happy that there are so many other platforms right now that are speaking to this. And I know you're from England.
Yes.
And I've got to say, the UK, I follow the UK. What is happening in the UK is a precursor. They're always
big
ahead.
Conversation over that.
They've always been ahead. So hat tip to those wonderful women. In going back to the deprivation culture, I know that there are some things that you've talked about at our gatherings that we should avoid.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Probably the two things are alcohol and caffeine.
Right.
I have very strong feelings about this, that we have projected onto us as women, this whole kind of, well, I can only start my day with this enormous coffee, and I can only relax with a giant glass of wine at night.
Right.
So it's on birthday cards for whenever you go and shop for your friends.
True.
And it's like this real trope. And perimenopause, again, is an opportunity for us to get to know ourselves without these things. I find it quite infantilizing. It's almost like, well, women can't handle life unless they've got like the giant coffee and the alcohol, you know?
I never thought of it that way.
I'm like, okay, just watch me handle life without those two things. But it's a great opportunity to experiment with yourself and be like, okay, what is my natural daily energy without the caffeine? I specifically mention caffeine because whenever we drink a cup of coffee, a caffeinated cup of coffee, it triggers the fight or flight response in the body.
Makes you jittery.
And that's the jittery, but also the buzz and the hyper focus.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but it triggers the fight, flight, freeze or fawn response in the brain. And then our body is expecting us to have to fight a lion or run from a bear. And so it just dumps a whole load of glucose into the bloodstream. Then we have excess glucose running around the bloodstream. And if that glucose has nowhere to go, we're just sat at our desks, or we're sat in the car in traffic, kind of silently ranging, but not moving, then that glucose gets laid down around the middle as glycogen, and that's when we get blood sugar imbalance and weight gain around the middle. With alcohol, it's damaging for the brain as we are going through a period of time and our brains are rejigging themselves and rebuilding. So we're losing a lot of neural pathways. We actually have more efficient brains after perimenopause than we did before perimenopause.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And
that's good news.
Yeah. There's fewer neurons to choose or move down. And that is that whole kind of, well, I have no F's to give anymore. Like, you just, all the drops out of your brain and you're like, why was I worried about that for years?
Oh my gosh.
I am not worrying about that anymore.
This is new information.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So there's this whole neural pruning, and that is why we feel the way that we do. And so just be gentle on your brain whilst it's going through a period of change, and maybe abstain from alcohol whilst you're in perimenopause, and just have stay within guidelines and have a little tipple when you're in menopause.
Right. So I was going to say, I'm a big believer. I was raised moderation in everything. That's what I live by. So.
Yeah. But there's also a power in boundaries and knowing, like, okay, this is me. I know I'm good. I'm good. I'm waking up and I have energy without, I've gone through that week with the cracking headache. I'm waking up and I've got good energy without that. And this is me. I can relax without alcohol. Yeah. Like, you get to know yourself better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm also like...
And you have less peer pressure too, right?
Yeah.
And even if you do have peer pressure, you're kind of more empowered to say, I don't need to walk. Okay, I know this is going to sound cliche, but a lot of people, it's like their coffee cup in their hand is their status symbol.
Right.
And I'm like, no, that's garbage to me, but that's your thing, but I'm like, but that's a peer pressure thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're that odd person out that doesn't have that coffee cup, what does that say about you?
Yeah. And the other thing to remember is that the organ that is doing most of the work for us whilst we're going through hormonal change with peaks in hormone, which like peaks in estrogen cause the hot flashes and can cause breast pain, and it's super uncomfortable. Excessive bleeding also super inconvenient and uncomfortable. Our liver is responsible for breaking down excess hormone and packaging it up ready to be removed from the body with fiber in our poop. So when you take out caffeine and you take out alcohol, your liver is then free to get on with its job, which is managing excess hormone for you, and your symptoms will reduce.
Oh, Good to know.
I think we see this anecdotally, like online on posts about menopause, where women are just like, oh my God, I gave up coffee and then suddenly my symptoms were gone. I gave up alcohol and now I can sleep and my symptoms are gone. But we're working where we still need the research, like we're working on our own here.
Yes.
And we need proper research to know that that is exactly what is happening. But anecdotally, that's what we see.
Yes.
And it's because the liver has the job of clearing excess.
That's good information.
So all you can do to eat for your liver health, like drinking more water again, pulling out caffeine and alcohol, more leafy greens in your diet. You know, you would wake up and have a lemon water in the morning. Like if you've never done that before, see how you feel doing that, because you're helping to flush your liver out in the morning, flush your liver through, and just improve the health of the liver. Anything we can do, and that will help to bring our symptoms down.
I'd have to talk about yams because I'm still kind of like, I remember the episodes from Sex and the City with Samantha and her yams and how she went nuts on yam. I personally don't like yams. Sorry, yam. Tell me a little bit about these superfoods maybe that are good for us.
Well, there are foods that contain phytoestrogens.
Okay.
And these are very gentle on the body.
Okay.
And so we can choose those foods to also support us through the process. So when we're eating foods that are high in phytoestrogens, we also see a reduction in our symptoms as we pass through perimenopause. And so I would also recommend eating more of those when we're in full menopause. So we have our adrenal health needs to be good. So we're drip fed our own internal HRT, source at a low level, but we can also pick foods that help us to top that up. Ground flax is the queen of foods. Ground flax.
Okay.
Yeah, or linseeds, they call them in the UK.
Okay. They call it linseed here too.
So ground linseeds are the highest source of phyto.
Well, I'm thinking of linseed oil.
Right.
So
no, that's more woodworking, I think.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
Don't do that.
I hope I'm not eating that. Okay, so ground flax seeds.
Yeah.
So what would I make with that?
So you can include that into any baking that you're doing.
Good to know.
You can sprinkle it onto your oatmeal. You can put it in on top of granola. Chia seeds are great. Hemp seeds are great. Chickpeas, yams are great. Yeah. So there's the foods that they actually contain phytoestrogens. They're out there in nature. All plants have phytoestrogens, and we can pick from those too.
Oh, good to know. Do you have to eat like a ton of it?
No, I don't. I think what you need to do is just be conscious of what the list is.
Right.
And then keep picking, like if you're making a smoothie, add hemp seeds. If you're having oatmeal every day or you're having granola every day, and this again is the opposite of diet culture.
Yes.
I'm going to add in more. I'm going to add in the phytoestrogen with a tablespoon of ground flax. Pumpkin seeds are also a good source. Sesame seeds. So I'm going to add in more. I've made a stir fry for the family tonight. I'm going to add in more. I'm having the sesame seeds on the top. So it's not a case of like, okay, I need a cup full of ground flax or linseeds every day. It's like, I know all of these foods contain something that's important for me at this time of life. And I'm just going to sprinkle them through.
I like it.
I'm going to have a chia pudding for breakfast one day or for a snack. And,
chia pudding. Ooh,
yeah.
That sounds delicious.
So soaking chia seeds in coconut milk or any other milk that you enjoy and adding berries.
I just had a great idea.
Yeah.
When we do our next menopause gathering, we'll have like a cooking class.
Super easy to make.
Let's do it.
Takes 5 minutes to make, and you can have them in jam jars in your refrigerator.
Oh, I like it.
And then you're like, get up in the morning and you're just grabbing a glass jar. It's got the chia seeds. It could have ground flax in it. It's got berries, frozen berries or cherries. It's got the coconut oil with the medium chain fatty acids for your brain. And you are like, I'm doing good for me today. It's not even 9 a.m. and I'm like supporting my menopausal body.
Love it. let's talk a little bit about cacao, because that was a big, like mind-blowing piece of information. Tell us a little bit about cacao and how it's helpful and what we can add it to.
Okay. Raw cacao is a vasodilator.
Okay.
So it helps the blood vessels to open up. It is also packed full of iron and for energy and magnesium, which is our relaxation mineral. I would say after fiber, the second most common deficiency is magnesium.
Yes.
All across North America, and because of our diet.
Right.
So raw cacao is a great food to include if you are perimenopausal and menopausal. It vasodilates, so it opens up the blood vessels for your heart health, for your brain health, and it also opens up the blood vessels in the pelvic floor.
Okay.
So it helps to increase blood flow to the pelvic region. We've had estrogen doing that for all of our lives.
Yes.
And so it's great that we can then say, okay, I know my estrogen is depleting. I may be feeling dry down there. I'm going to introduce raw cacao.
Okay, great.
And in the Mayan culture, it is midlife women that process the cacao. That becomes their kind of medicine, their magic.
Yes.
That is their role. And it is perfectly at the time of life where our bodies are supported by raw cacao at this age as well. So whenever you go back to indigenous thinking and culture and knowledge, it's always makes sense. And then we're like waiting, and then science backs up exactly the practices that they were doing.
I'm often, almost daily, in kind of like this disbelief that we don't listen.
But why don't we just listen and do what they say?
Exactly. So
I know
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast,
to be honest with you.
But drinking raw cacao is sometimes I have a raw cacao in the afternoon, like mid-afternoon, if I'm feeling a lull and I need a bit more energy. There is some caffeine in cacao, but you're getting that iron, you're also getting the magnesium, and then you're getting the vasodilation.
Okay.
And if you're feeling very emotional at this time of life, because it is a heart opener and a brain, it links the heart and the brain because of the vasodilation. It might even make you feel emotional drinking raw cacao, and that's okay. Just let it out.
Well, it's supposed to make you feel good.
Yeah,
it is one of those magical.
Yeah,
magical. I think all food is magic, to be honest with you. I want to talk about, and this is the subject that most people identify with menopause, and that is the weight gain.
Yeah.
And the thickening of the waist area. It happens, and don't think there's a lot of people it doesn't happen to, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And
because I would say that I have not worked with one woman that hasn't brought that up.
Yeah,
like it is the directive of our lives that we need to meet beauty standards and stay very lean and slim. And so it is a priority for very many women. When we think about weight gain around the middle in midlife, which is, it happens, there are three things going on at the same time.
Okay.
It's complex. So we are having hormonal changes. So we're going to a lower level of estrogen. And that means that your body will change naturally anyway to be a little bit more straight up and down for some women. Like,
okay.
Yeah. And then we have blood sugar balance is the other driver of weight gain around the middle, or blood sugar imbalance. So estrogen also has a role in the body where it supports insulin in helping the cells to open up and absorb sugar. So we become more insulin resistant. Insulin goes to the cells of the body and it knocks on the cell and it says, open up, you need to take the sugar out of the bloodstream. And estrogen helps it to bang on the door louder so that the cell hears. So we're losing estrogen, we're going to a lower level. And so all women become more insulin resistant. That is something to be aware of. Bringing down excess sugar in your diet is important at this time of life.
Yeah.
So if we carry on eating with a very high sugar diet, and the sugar in everything these days, like meat and bread, and it's everywhere.
Sugar is in meat?
Yeah.
Like
in preserved meat, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But not just...
Not raw meat, no.
Okay.
No, but in like sausage and ham and, anything you buy that's packaged. Processed.
Yeah.
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 And fast food and restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more we can bring excess sugar down and stick with the natural sweeteners, the less likely we are to have weight gain around the middle. The third thing that's going on is that we are shifting to our adrenal glands taking up the role of creating estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone at a lower level for us. Our adrenal glands are also responsible for our stress response. That can cause dysregulation of blood sugar, because if we're in fight or flight, freeze or fawn, it dumps glucose into the bloodstream, and that will be laid down around the middle. So there is also another biological survival mechanism in our adrenal glands, where if we're under chronic stress all of the time, the building blocks for our hormones, all of our hormones, just immediately go down a pathway to build more cortisol in our body, our stress hormone.
Yeah.
And that excess cortisol then pushes the button to build more cortisol. It becomes a bit of a cycle. So just having chronic stress, when we have high levels of cortisol, we crave sugar, we crave salty foods, we crave the things that are unhealthy for us.
Psychologically and also
physically. Yeah.
Oh, I know that about myself.
Yeah. So the more stress we have, the more stress we're under as we pass through perimenopause to lower levels of estrogen, knowing that we're becoming more insulin resistant, then again, the more we are kicked into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn and get that glucose dump into the body, the more we will have weight gain around the middle.
Okay, good to know.
So the strategies are more fiber in your diet. Again, it helps you to feel fuller for longer. More healthy fats, they help you to feel fuller for longer. Great protein, it helps you to feel fuller for longer. And all of those foods balance your blood sugar level so that you're not spiking and crashing and you're not insulin resistant. You have greater insulin sensitivity. And then the other strategy would be bringing down chronic stress.
Oh, I'm a huge
putting boundaries in, and again, it's that whole mental shift as well of having no F's to give anymore.
Right.
But I mean, if you have, and I talk to women or I coach women, I'm like, where do you need to speak up in midlife and say, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to say no to this. Yeah. I've had this frenemy or a distant family member for years, and I'm actually not dealing with it I'm not taking the stress of that situation anymore. What can you pluck out of the garden that is your life? What can you weed so that you can be zen and calm and just be doing you?
That is so well put. I was very, very fortunate to have a doctor when I was in my 30s alert me to how dangerous having stress in your life was. And I am genetically predisposed, and he's like, this is what you've got to be careful about. So I am a big believer in, as little stress as possible. And I try to walk that walk. Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Louise, because it's not mentioned enough. We have all of these tools to, help our health. But then, we look at these people that are like, go, 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 and eating all the right foods and doing all the exercises. But they, on top of that, have this hugely stressful life. And I'm like, you've got more work to do here.
That's right.
So thank you for mentioning that.
And I always say to women, if you are not being a princess in perimenopause, then you're not doing it right.
Oh, I love that too.
Now is the time. We already have the reputation of being messy and grumpy and demanding in perimenopause. Lean in.
Lean into it.
Put boundaries in.
Oh, I love that.
Put down time tasks that you've been doing for years.
Yeah.
If you have grown kids, just start delegating the things that you were doing. When I have cooked a meal at night, kids, I am not cleaning up. That is now your job. And I will be walking for 10 minutes after I've eaten my dinner because I'm balancing my blood sugar. It's one of the most impactful actions that you can take for your blood sugar is just walking for 10 minutes after a meal and to lower, and just go for a stroll. It's now their job to tidy up. And then you can just be walking along like, I am such a wonderful mother because I'm teaching life skills here.
That part too.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk forever. And I'm hoping that we will continue to have these great conversations, Louise, because personally, food is everything. And I just love that you bring so much of this knowledge to the conversation. I do want you to take this opportunity also to tell people how to get in touch with you, because you provide this, it's like counseling. It really is, like, because you bring in your own how to approach the bigger conversations.
Well, when I thought I was falling apart, I thought my body had turned on me completely. And I went to see my doctor and I was told you should expect to feel this way at your age. So the word perimenopause was not even used. So I came out of that appointment. I'm like, I still don't know what's happening. I still don't know what's going on. So I feel very strongly, just share all the information. Women are intelligent and women know what they need. And then you can, once you have all the information about food, about lifestyle changes, about risk factors for your health, which every woman should be told, you know, it's not the cause of cardiovascular disease, but it is a risk factor that your hormones are changing. Here's how you can change what you eat. And then we can go for the low-hanging fruit in our busy lives, do what we know we can do that will have impact. And it's empowering. We need the information.
Yeah, it is very empowering. So how are people going to be able to get in touch with you?
So I'm online at louisecarnutrition.com.
Okay.
And then I have an online course as well called Menopause U. It's kind of like a school for women. It's what we don't get and what I wish I'd had.
Exactly.
And it covers everything from food, lifestyle, stress, and also mindset, like rethinking, what do I want for myself in the future? I'm in change. Again, lean into the change.
I love it.
What lights you up and how can you get more of that into your life? And so that you really enjoy the next chapter and that you are strong and healthy to put all your energy into it.
Here's to the strength and the power. Thank you so much, Louise. And thank you everyone who has joined us today on Meant to Pause. These are important conversations that we're having in our community and with you. And we want to thank the wonderful people of House of Owl again for this great space. We're coming to you from Victoria, British Columbia. Bye-bye.